let's discuss cognition, something that a lot of people are passionate about, me included. Right from my first pre-workout, I wanted to know, how can I take my mental state to the absolute maximum output? Something that I think we all feel good on, when we're actively getting through things, whether it be a good training session, a good working, productive environment. These things we're quite fulfilled by as humans. So we're all seeking a higher level of cognition, a higher output, but a lot of people tend to resort to some sort of stimulant or something that they can take. So they're going to massively improve or increase their caffeine. They're going to resort to modafinil and things that they can take, Ritalins, etc., or Adderall, or pre-workouts in the gym. Now, these things are all real cognitive enhancers, and they have a practical application, and I use them and I recommend them, and I think that they have a place, and we'll talk about them. But exclusively, they will not do what you need, okay? If you're long-term underslept, then all of these things become just a short-term masking that make you feel good, but don't necessarily improve cognition and productivity. Sleep is the first thing. Sleep in sleep cycles. Your average sleep cycle is like 70 to 110 minutes, the average of which is obviously 90 if you did the math. 90 is an hour and a half. An hour and a half is sleep cycle. So sleep in hour and a half blocks. Don't wake up, but do sleep in hour and a half blocks. So if you're going to do, let's say 4.5 hours, that's going to be better for you than 5. If you can only do 6 hours, that's better for you than 6.5. Okay, so try and stick to your 1.5 hour blocks when it comes to sleep. So sleep 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, 9. I actually think 9's too much. I think 7.5 is the sweet spot. 6 is quite efficient. Once we've nailed that and we can consistently do it on the same circadian rhythm, sleeping at relatively similar times every single day, ultimately, from the beginning there, we're going to be a much higher level of cognition every single day. So we're well slept. Next, we're fasted. Okay, when we've woken up from a good night's sleep, we're fasted. So taking advantage of being in a fasted state is something that I really recommend. It's not going to be for every case scenario. If you peak off season or whatever, then obviously it's tougher because it delays the necessary food that you might need to grow in a calorie surplus, etc. But ultimately, speaking from a strictly cognitive standpoint, being fasted is a good thing up until a certain point. But for the most part, a good few hours early in the morning, crack on with your tasks in a fasted state. This kind of relates to carbs. Carbs are something that will inhibit productivity and cognition. If you crush a big meal, high carb meal, 1,000 plus calories of a lot of carbs in, you will impact cognition negatively. So I also recommend breaking your meals down into smaller, more frequent meals, providing that it can be done for you efficiently, or you have meal preps or something that doesn't take hours to cook consistently and you end up doing 5 hours. I would eat small, frequent meals throughout the day to keep your cognition high and stop that carb coma from a big meal. Relating to carbs, we're going to hit the gym at some point throughout the day. Try and hit the gym at a point where it breaks up the work day. I like to train first thing in the morning, but that's because for me, my cognition is very high all day because I'm very organized, I've got a good team around me, I've got a very good setup. But I used to try and break the day up with a gym session halfway through as a means of getting a work block done, hitting the gym, then another work block. That used to work for me until I managed to get my life to a level of efficiency where I can now just crack on all day. And finally then, the more interesting stuff, the supplementation aspects of cognition, because once we've nailed everything else, people are still going to look for more, okay? This is the interesting bit that you probably wanted to hear. And I'm a fan of these supplements. I use them. I have for years. I think my first ever video on modafinil was like 2018. So I'm definitely a fan and I'm an advocate for it. But I'm an advocate for efficaciously dosed, sensibly used supplementation of cognitive stimulants and nothing more, okay? Obviously. Because ultimately, these things have a tolerance. And if you crush your tolerance with a super high dose, or you run it every day, it's not useful anyway. So it's only you who's losing out. There's only a level of cognition that you can get to before it just becomes overload, right? Especially for certain things. We'll get onto that. So firstly, caffeine. It's the obvious one. It's what people use every single day. Almost everybody in the world is consuming caffeine at some point. They're drinking Coke. They're having coffees. Most people are consuming caffeine. Caffeine is sensible, it's safe. It's healthy in some regard for most people. But there's a clear-cut, efficacious dose for caffeine. Running a couple of coffees a day, a couple of espresso shots, having a monster, maybe 2, is fine. Having 5 monsters a day, having 15 coffees, you're crossing a boundary there. You're taking it too far. And not only are you running the health risks of too high of a dosage, but you're also ruining the effects. The tolerance that you need to be a good responder will be ruined. So running super high dosage of any of these cognitive supplements, it's only going to risk your health and impact your benefit from it. So run a couple of monsters a day at a max, run 5 coffees a day at a max. Really for me, coffee monster combo is all I need after the gym, which sounds crazy to most people because they do it pre-workout, but for me, work's more important, so I'll use supplements around work. So after the gym in the morning, I'll have coffee, and then I'll maybe have a monster. And then in days where I've got incredibly high cognition demanding tasks that don't require much creativity, I'll run like a modafinil, for example. So once we've dosed caffeine efficaciously, we've kept it far enough away from bedtime, we can explore something more creative like modafinil or Ritalin. Really, what you choose is up to you. Again, when efficaciously dosed, far enough away from bedtime, I think this makes sense to use on certain tasks. So if you've got really high cognition tasks, things like spreadsheets, for example, to do, it makes sense. If you're a creative person and you've got to be creative, you're trying to do design work, you need to think innovatively, I would actually swerve this stuff because it really doesn't help with that. It makes you very efficient at monotony. It doesn't make you very creative. So key take homes then for cognition: sleep in 1.5 hour cycles on a good circadian rhythm within a good routine every single day. Try and refrain from crushing carbs in one big go or calories in general. Try and distribute calories out throughout the day as much as you can. If you want to be really optimal, pair your carbs with your workout window. Eat your carbs pre, intra, post workout. Train at a point in the day when productivity breaks, and support with stimulants where you need to in efficacious doses far enough away from bedtime so that you can still be sleeping optimally.